What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another Detroit Lions instant reaction type of video. And today, we are here to dive into this Lions-Cowboys, I don't even want to say loss. This doesn't feel like a loss. 20-19 game last night. So let's get it started. Welcome, ready to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, man, we are back with another initial reaction. It's not instant reaction. It's initial reactions video where I go back, rewatch the game, and I discuss the game and the things that I took away from my first initial rewatch. Now, with that, of course, it's not the all-22 version, so there's a lot of things that I can't see, and this is not the full breakdown. That will likely happen later in the week like we do usually weekly. However, it's kind of just that initial rewatch where I can kind of look back at it, see things that maybe I didn't notice when the game was live because I was so emotionally invested. And at the same time, we didn't do a video like this yesterday. We did our show on Bleacher Report afterwards, but nothing else. To be honest with you, I just kind of wanted to move on. I just kind of wanted to go to bed. I didn't want to talk about it. I was just frustrated. And those are the types of things that it's hard because you can't be just frustrated on how they executed or what they called. Like, to me, I mean, those aren't things that you could control at all. So it's very frustrating when a game ends like that. Plus, I thought we played our butts off in that football game, and the way that we fought ourselves back, the history there, like, it was frustrating. So I just wanted to go to bed. I wanted to move on, and I wanted to rewatch the game. And here we are today to talk about that. Now, I'm not going to make this video, and I'm not going to make this week about talking about the officiating, okay? We haven't really done that all year. Every game we could sit back and say, well, you know, what if you did this, and that doesn't matter. And that is true. That is true in a lot of games. But at the same time, officiating does matter. All right, there is an aspect of it does matter, especially because you can't control some of these things like took place in this. It does matter, and it will affect games because so many NFL games, the outcomes are one-score games. So officiating naturally is going to matter. But the issue is it matters way too much right now. And I'll just say this as an NFL fan, the officiating has been seemingly absolutely horrible this season. I just want to throw that out there. It's been terrible, and it's concerning going into the playoffs. I understand, okay, that crew may not get a playoff game. Oh, dang, that's a problem. Like, who cares? To be honest with you, it's an absolute mess that they have going on right now, and I'm looking at this from a future side of things. They got to get that figured out. They absolutely have to get that figured out. Full-time guys on staff, whatever that may be, maybe bringing back some of the old officials that are now getting paid a lot of money to just sit on TV, put those guys back into it, make sure they're getting paid. I don't know the solution to it, but there's got to be something that improves this. You're always going to have calls that you're like, I'm not sure about that one or this one. There's always going to be those hit and miss, but it's the inconsistencies that do drive me the most nuts. Those are the ones that are frustrating. Obviously, this ineligible thing, that's frustrating because it's just simple as, man, we told you this, we lied this out before the game, and all of a sudden this still gets wrong. This wasn't a like, oh, I don't know if he actually did grab him or not. That's just like, what are we doing? What are we at? What are we doing? All right. Or the inconsistencies. I go back a couple years. We were at the Baltimore game and no delay of game. I didn't make any big deal of it during the game as a Lions fan watching because I didn't even notice it. But at the same time, when you step back, you look at that, like, why don't they have a better system? Why look up and then look down to see? Why not just have something go off that tells you, hey, they ran out of time? You get inconsistencies, and that's still the same process. So things like that are just frustrating because it's the same process. You know it's an issue, but yet you just choose not to do anything about it. I'll end up pointing out some specific examples a little bit later in this video, so stay tuned for that. But another inconsistency example, not even just in this game in general, but we've seen this season. How about the fact that, and we saw it to the other team, it happened to Dallas. So this isn't even just a Lions thing. It happened to Dallas where they try to let the clock run down. They think because they're tight, hey, we're not going to get a call. We're going to let that happen. And obviously, they get the delay of game. Now, that's how it should be. But because of that weird little delay, earlier this season, the Lions let it run out, and the officials did nothing. They let it go to the 2-minute warning. There was no problem. Even though it was a slight difference, they were fine with it. Yet, we come back against Chicago, we try to do the same thing. Guess what they do? Delay of game. And it's like, wait a minute. You didn't call that earlier in the season, so now there's teams that are confused as that. Are we allowed to do this or we're not? I guess we're not allowed to do this, right? But there's this weird little flaws that they have because they leave these inconsistencies available, and that is the problem that I have. So I'll talk about more specific examples later. This ineligible play, I don't want to get too much into it because a lot of it's already been talked about, whether that's Taylor Decker, did he walk over there? He did. We see the video of it. Jared Goff told him to do it. Dan Campbell told him before the game. He walked over there, told them that he was going to be eligible. We'll take a look at the play a little bit later at the end of this video, but based on how the line's aligned, you have to have two guys on the ball. You have to have two eligible players on the ball on each side of the center in the NFL. You can't, like college, have two on one side. So just based on how the line's lined up alone, it told you that Taylor Decker, if he was eligible, would have made it a legal formation. And they didn't call an illegal formation, which also tells you that they also didn't see that side of it, which makes it completely weird because, like, wait a minute, you didn't say it was an illegal formation. They just said that he was ineligible, which means that they just did not handle the information that the Lions gave them at all when it happened. Yes, we had multiple offensive linemen over, including Penei Sewell. Obviously, you don't want necessarily the defense just to know who's going to be eligible, though they do announce it, and I believe they actually announced it as Dan Skipper is eligible, so immediately they had that whole thing messed up. But, you know, again, I don't want to focus too much on that. A lot of this has already been said. I'll focus on other examples that frustrate me more with consistencies in the NFL later in in this video. That's why we're wearing the Lions vs. Ref shirts today, because it fits in. Again, I'm not going to make this all about the officiating. Mainly, we're going to talk about the game. But I just wanted to start off by saying that it is frustrating. It is absolutely frustrating, but I want to talk about this game. And it's unfortunate because of how much it meant playoff-wise, and we just saw Philadelphia lose, even though that wouldn't have really mattered necessarily to us. I mean, we really would have controlled our own destiny. If we would have beat Dallas, if we would have beat Minnesota, we'd have very least gotten a 2 seed. That's a massive difference when you take a look at just home field. The Lions has a 2 seed versus a 3 seed, which they're almost like kind of locked into at this point, it feels like. That's a massive difference. If you were to win your first round of the playoffs, you're probably now going on the road to play in that second round, likely against one of those top seeds. So it is a pretty big difference. However, we did just see Philadelphia take that L, all right? And I guess there is a path in which maybe either one, Dallas decides to lose next week, and so does Philly, and the Lions ultimately win their game, and maybe they somehow still get the 2 seed, probably unlikely. Or the other scenario is Dallas ends up winning that division, they handle business, they win that division, they get the 2 seed, which would be annoying because, like, really, they got the 2 seed off of this? However, they would have a home game. And then there's a real scenario where the Lions is the 3 seed, if they can handle business in the first round, could meet up with Dallas again. And I got to tell you what, I'd love a part 2 to this. I would love a part 2 to this. Not the officiating, but I'd love to run it back against this team, and I'd feel really good about doing it in Dallas. In the Dome, I'd feel good about it. So I'm just saying it could work out to be a really fun part 2. However, let's dive into some of these key plays as usual. I'm going to show some clips as we go through this. So let's dive right into this and talk through some of the things that I took away. Again, on my first initial rewatch, that's it. It's only my first initial rewatch, but I did take some notes from each play, so I feel pretty good about a lot of things that I saw in this one. So let's dive right into it. Let's start off. We're going to go through the game here, kind of work through it. First thing that we have to showcase is just a nice little design here. Cover 1. We know that this team liked to play man coverage coming into this game, and here you see Amon-Ra St. Brown. I love the way that they kind of utilize, like, switching the stem of the route here between St. Brown and the other receiver to kind of open him up, create leverage. We saw that in a lot of different ways: stacks, motion, plays like this where you kind of switch your stems of your routes versus man coverage. And at the same time, you also notice getting those shot plays through play action on early downs. Clearly, that was something the Lions intended, that's where they wanted to try to get those shots at, right? They didn't want to live in a drop back passing attack if possible, and they were kind of forced into it at the end, which, you know, credit to them, man, they answered the bell. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get towards the end of the game here. However, this was the Lions' plan, right? They wanted to make guys like Micah Parsons take a second. You couldn't immediately rush the field. You had to deal with the run first. And this was a really good example of just having a nice design. St. Brown, his value is so high for us because, you know, we know he's an excellent slot receiver. We know he's going to block, right? No, he does all these little things. His route detail, his run after catch is so impressive, but he also gives Yeoman a hill line on the outside. So now I can go heavy personnel, right? I can make you try to match personnel where Dallas doesn't really have that personnel on their roster. And at the same time, I can just put him on the outside and put him on Deron Bland. Like, we're like, okay, who's the best matchup? Just put your best receiver over there. And St. Brown's been able to do that again this year. He did it against the Chargers. Here we are again. We saw it a little bit against Denver. Here we are again. So, yeah, I'm just saying, just some love. Love me some St. Brown. All right, on to the defensive side of the ball. How about Ife Melifonwu, man? Picking up right where he's left off these last few weeks. You know what? To see where all the playoff scenario kind of falls into place here. But I'll tell you this, man. It's going to be hard to take Ife off the field, regardless of who's coming back, right? CD Deuce, I would love to have him out there. Maybe him and Ife. That could be a real possibility. We'll talk about that more, I think, going forward. But Ife being on the field gives you a lot of value. Now, I'll say this. Ife, I don't think has been as great against receivers as maybe you would have hoped. Usually don't expect your safety to match up with receivers extremely well, but because he's a former corner, the Lions seemingly love that idea of, hey, we can bring the slot and just let him cover up the receiver. And it makes sense. Like, I would do it on Madden and be like, yeah, that's a heck of a value. But he hasn't seemingly been great there. He's much better seemingly against tight ends than receivers. He just hasn't really seemed to have a ton of answers there. However, this is the type of thing that you love. And to me, what this was, we talked about the discipline play last week. Cover 3, trusts his corners to pass it off. He stays disciplined, jumps it, undercuts it, picks it off, wins the game. This interception here, number 1, it keeps points off the board in a low-scoring game. That's super important. But number 2, Ife's trust to pass it off to the linebacker, who in this Tampa 2 look, right, because he's playing the middle field, he's dropping there, to trust to just let the linebacker take that and then float over top and play his zone. Not trying to play someone else's zone, but playing his zone, getting to his spot, and then just lurking. And then the ball skills, making an interception, took points off the board. That was massive. So regardless of what we did offensively with that, the fact is you didn't let them get points. And that was huge. Ife has just been a game changer for us, whether there's a blitzer, run defender, and now here he is in coverage, and he's just doing it in maybe even different ways than you would expect. I still like him on tight ends, though, so let me make that clear. I still do like that. Offensively, some other things that I did like in this game. game, like this screen tunnel look here, for example, made a lot of sense coming into it, and we actually saw a lot of looks like this last season. Now, it felt like last year we kind of had to lean into this more. It was like more of our offense, but I also think there's a specific way that you have to play and kind of beat Dallas. The way that you want to play Dallas, and we saw that in this game. They didn't want to play drop-back passing mode, yet they got into it, and they were able to execute at the end. However, plays like this is what we saw from the Lions last year, too. Screen tunnel, they get the edges to go upfield. They also use the stack to get the off coverage so that they can create and get a little bit of space. Also, you throw Jameson Williams on the line of scrimmage, his threat over top. Obviously, we got to see that a little bit later in the game. Then you see here like an end-around play to Jameson Williams. Now, we had a lot of missed assignments, and I'll say this, it's tricky to block these guys, so it's not like an easy responsibility, whether that's up front because of the quickness and athleticism they play with, their ability to slant, or it's the second level. While they're not the biggest guys, they really only have one pure off-ball linebacker in Damone Clark. What they do have is a lot of pursuit and a lot of speed, and they're difficult to pick up. But we also had a lot of missed assignments, and we're going to take a look at a few of those. But a play like this, for example, this end around here, you can see based on how James Mitchell gets his block kind of sealed up, you kind of try to open up that outside lane seemingly here. If Laporta picks up on the outside, lets Jameson take off. Instead, Jameson picks up 6 yards because Laporta peeks back to kind of seal off the run play. Everybody's aggressive upfield, so he has nobody to block. Now, all of a sudden, he doesn't pick up the block. Jameson is then forced to cut back inside and is limited to a 6-yard gain. I think Laporta, by any means, had his best run blocking game in this one. He definitely struggled for a lot of this game. Now, he settled in. He had a really good block in here that I don't have, but DeMarcus Lawrence, man, he moved DeMarcus Lawrence, and I was like, that's impressive. That's a really good player. However, for the majority of the game, obviously, his run blocking did have some struggles, and the Lions made some tweaks to that as the game went on. Obviously, schematically, we saw second half, a lot of outside zone rushing. They kind of just leaned into that for a lot of it. They had some mixture in there as well, but they kind of leaned into the outside zone rushing. Speaking of that, though, here's an outside zone run that did not work. And a couple of these just in terms of picking up your matchups and assignments based on the defensive movement pre-snap. And we've seen this before, mainly like when we'll see a linebacker walk down to the line at the snap and then he rushes off the edge and it forces an immediate cutback. This feels like kind of an example of that where you utilize the receiver motion and the defensive back does not follow. Jordan Lewis does not follow. Instead, he stands right into the box. Now with that, they're kind of essentially blitzing it seems like on this play. Now the defensive front slants. So you see here with Jonah Jackson, you can see Micah Parsons. To me, I think Jonah Jackson wanted to get hands on Micah, but Micah is willing to slant inside because they know they have Lewis as well that's going to fill out the other gap. So he's willing to just step in and fill that single gap. So when he makes that move on Jonah, who I think Jonah was going after, now all of a sudden he just immediately moves to Jordan Lewis and Micah Parsons is completely unblocked. But that extra body in the box that maybe was a little bit unexpected, I think blew everything up here. See Frank Ragnall's attention. He's going to the 2-eye here, focused on sealing him off to allow this run to happen, allow Jonah Jackson to get to the second level and pick up that block. But at the same time, once it slants inside, Frank doesn't find, Micah Parsons on the play. And he also, again, with the extra defender, they don't really match up to kind of count numbers to pick that up. So it's going to leave a free rusher here for somebody. On to the defensive side of the ball, I think in general, we have to give them a lot of credit. I thought coming into this one, this is actually one of my better score predictions of the year. I had 27-21. I had the Lions winning, of course. And if they would have took the extra point and scored a touchdown in overtime, I would have almost been money in this game. So Lions, come on, man, you did me kind of dirty there. Same time, what I felt was going to be the key in this game was actually going to be the defensive side of the ball. I knew they were very difficult offensively, and I knew there was a certain style that you had to play with, and they're very capable of creating negatives, forcing turnovers. So I thought defensively was going to be the real challenge because I thought Aaron Glenn had a good plan for him last year when we played them, and I thought in this one it was going to be about, okay, how does the defense answer the challenge in this one? And obviously there's specific moments we can point to where we can question what they were doing. Cam Sutton had a rough game. As a whole, I would say this was a pretty darn good defensive performance. Now, they did kind of have a touchdown taken off the board because of the fumble by CeeDee Lamb trying to go into the end zone, which forced a touchback. But at the same time, they also had a touchdown on a missed sack in the end zone that should have been a safety, which led to a 92-yard touchdown to CeeDee Lamb. So they kind of had those things sort of offset. Overall, I think this was a really good defensive performance. They kept us in the game, and they gave us a chance at the end to get the ball back, especially after the Goff interception. It kind of felt like, man, are we even going to see this thing again? They had a weird tripping call, began back to the officials. Not even just a Lions thing. I don't know. The officials are pretty terrible right now, but they gave us a chance, gave us the ball back offensively, and I think in general, you just have to give them a lot of credit with the way that they showed up in this game. Another seemingly good plan from Glenn. Seemed like we kind of had two different approaches, first half versus second half. Second half felt a lot more aggressive. Definitely some more man coverage it felt like was mixed in there as well, but I did love this. Slot blitzing here. Specifically, this one was Kendall Vilder as we were kind of matching up in man coverage here, but the Lions still bring Kendall Vilder. This is where we talk about that flexibility they feel comfortable with, allowing Iffy to kind of of step down and pick it up so that they can blitz him, in this case from the slot because he had motioned in, but that also allowed the Lions to then off the backside get really aggressive and slant inside, and we saw 2 tackles for loss on this. This one, for example, we also saw another one with Aiden Hutchinson because we were able to slant the backside and blow up the play before he even got started, pulling away from the backside on the run play. So I did like to see that coming into this one. I wanted to see the Lions heat from the slot early on downs. I think we started to see that in this game, and I thought the Lions would kind of lean and try to drop back a little bit more on the second and third downs. Clearly, they got more aggressive than that in the second half, maybe I expected. However, there was some good and some bad that came along with it. But as we know, Aaron Glenn trusts his players. Third down conversions that were failed on, honestly, a lot of them felt like, man, just missed assignments blocking. And, some of them, it's like, okay, yeah, they slant, they bring the blitz, you're not expecting that, and we'll show a good example. But one like this, right, you run the split zone, this thing has a first down. And the Lions had ran something similar to this that actually picked up a first down. But here on a 3rd and 3, you're going to get the movement, right? You're going to get the movement that you need to easily pick up a first down, yet the split zone block is completely whiffed on, and it's shut down. Again, these are the things where I can question play calling and say, man, I don't love it. I would have liked to do something else. I do think it is a tough matchup to put a tight end on one of these edge defenders, and back to last year, those guys were blowing up everything. But at the same time, that was also the key, knowing coming into the game, is that these edge defenders were the difference makers against the run. I thought we could move their interior. I thought we did. It's why the outside zone worked. But I also thought these edge rushers were the guys that could force negatives. DeMarcus Lawrence, Sam Williams, Micah Parsons. And in this case, that's exactly what we see here. Fowler off the edge, completely whiff on the block, and it's the edge defender that blows it up. So I guess the biggest argument for play calling is like, maybe you don't want to put your tight end in that situation. But at the same time, like I said, it was arguably, I think from just initial rewatch, Sam Laporta's worst run blocking day I've seen this season. He had good reps, but there was also a lot of bad, and they trusted him in these spots, and early in the game, it did not work. Continuing on the offense side of the ball, clearly we had some miscues, specifically in the first half of this game, like this interception here. They go cover 3 seemingly, they bring a blitz on the play, and it just looked like, first off, credit to Lewis, man, super disciplined, right, to not float with kind of where the play was going, and he was able to stay disciplined, and he ends up kind of jumping this route, getting an interception. We also have a blown block on the interior. Odigizua gets pressure, and it felt like Jared Goff didn't even see the route, right? There was a blown block between Glasgow, and Goff kind of threw it blind, it seemed like, on display. Maybe he saw it, but I don't think he did. I think he just threw it. There, you would probably say, yeah, just throw it at the ground if you can't see it, but he kind of threw it blind, tried to put it on him because he got to see the running back. Like they say, if you see the running back, you put it on him. If there's someone in the way, you go over top. In this case, he put it on him, but he also didn't seemingly see Lewis. Speaking of miscues, they go to man coverage here. One guy that answered the bell in that last drive, Sam Laporta. He was awesome. But here in the first half, and this became crucial because it was a 2nd and 2, but they go cover 1 rat, and you end up dropping this pass, right? Goff, I thought he had good quarterback movement. He missed some throws, but I thought he had good movement within the pocket, and I think this was a good example of that. Finds his man, you just don't come up with the catch, and that turned out to be crucial. You also get some tight end help here from James Mitchell on Micah Parsons, and when we did that, we actually helped him out a ton. Maybe we should have done that a little bit more, honestly, in this game. But that became a key because then on 3rd and 2, you have a blown block on the interior. You instantly have to get the ball to Jamison Williams. The safety dives down. Pass is incomplete. It was low. It felt like kind of a safe pass just to kind of throw it down and away, and didn't really give Jamison a chance there, and maybe protecting his receiver a little bit as well. And now you're off the field. So it became a crucial spot because the Lions were so darn inefficient on 3rd and short, specifically in this first half for whatever reason. So that became a crucial drop. Obviously, he kind of made up for that on that final drive. Continuing with the offensive side, here was one of those tweaks that I saw. Outside zone here, but notice the split block they use is no longer Sam Laporta. They do it with James Mitchell. And on top of that, the movement. And this is something that's awesome because there's a lot of teams in the league, believe it or not, that are not great on the interior between their 2 defensive tackles, right? They're not great there at holding ground. I don't think San Francisco's great there. There's a lot of teams in the NFC that aren't great in those spots, and Dallas is one of those where, again, they're not bad against the run, but their edge defenders set a lot of that up. And also the Lions, I think they did an okay job dealing with Micah Parsons, that off-ball linebacker, as well, but they are not great there. And the Lions, again, with a healthy offensive line, went out there and got movement. And that's something that you want to see. Can they consistently get movement? And they were able to do that. Here you see them movement on Odigizua, move him off a spot. We also saw some of that on Mozzie Smith as well. This play, I didn't love watching it back with the front that they showed. I don't know why we would run a sweep here just seeing the front. However, again, miscues. You try to run that pin and pull. You're trusting in these tight ends, right? Lions put a lot of faith in these guys, and they've seen it over the week, so I understand why they did. However, in this game, it just was not there. You try to run this pin pull, it's completely failed by the tight end. Now all of a sudden they get their defender out on top of that, and it forces it wide. We saw kind of an example like this last week against Minnesota, where he failed to kind of pin and then pull around outside on DJ Wonnum, and he ended up forcing us to get wider and wider. This kind of felt the same. a little bit closer to the line, try to pin down and get outside of it. You fail on the block. All of a sudden, he's out there, and now you have a lot less ground to work with because you're going to the short side of the field. You only need a few yards, so you're like, man, if we could just hit this, we're going to walk to the end zone. Gives us so much speed. All he has to do is get up to that speed, and he's going to walk in. But you fail that instantly, and now all of a sudden it doesn't happen. Now, defensively here, we had some crucial plays, again, that kept us in it. Aiden Hutchinson was really one of those key guys. He wasn't winning every rep, but, man, he had some crucial plays, and this was one of them. Quarters coverage. We knew they wanted to take shots. Lions did a nice job. They didn't give up any shots on kind of those early down play action sets, essentially. They gave up a 3rd and 5 on a wheel route, basically, where they set up a big play, and they also, on cover 0, got the shot play in the first half to CeeDee Lamb. But some of these, like design, let's get Brandon Cooks over top, they weren't really there. And give a lot of credit to the Lions for handling that defensively. Cover 3, give a lot of credit. But Aiden Hutchinson, key sack here. Little example, and I know you're seeing this like on surface, and you're probably not like, man, this is awesome. But this cover 3 pass to Jameson Williams, the reason I think this is crucial is this. Number one, we saw a lot of JMO. It's cool. He's seeing a lot of route tree. Hopefully he's okay. But at the same time, what was massive about this is this. Earlier in the game, the Lions, on the first possession, Jared Goff went to the short side of the field. He went to the boundary side, tried to hit Josh Reynolds when they were playing off coverage. Stephon Gilmore dove on it. It was incomplete. We ended up picking up a 3rd and 10. We got a field goal that drive, so no one really realized, maybe that was something that was easy to forget. But this is huge because you saw on the backside, right, towards the field, Jameson Williams was open. And his ability to run these speed outs, and we've now seen that for weeks. That's a very good route in his route tree. Lions come back to it from the same alignment. Jameson Williams, you get that speed out route, this time again created to the field. And again, Jameson Williams wins, and then Goff adjusts, and he finds that. So I thought that was cool just to see the adjustment to almost feels like one of those things that you see on the tablet, and you come back, you're like, okay, I'm going to hit that next time. I got you, JMO. I see it now. Because that's one of those throws where you can't necessarily go up there, right, and do your 3-step drop and put the ball out, but do your 3-step drop and be like, actually, he's not open. Let me flip around and go find somebody else. Like, no, because the timing of the route, you make that decision when you're up there, right? So once you make that decision, the ball's going to go there. Otherwise, you're getting off of those speed out routes likely, unless it's a broken play. So that was cool to see just an adjustment in terms of the decision that was made. Also, both of those routes were ran on Stephon Gilmore, and even the Gibbs pass later that you'll see, which is incomplete, was ran on Gilmore. I think it was very smart strategically to try to run kind of these speed routes, these outbreaking routes against Gilmore rather than Bland, who has so many interceptions on those this season. One of the biggest miscues, specifically to me here, it was the 3rd and 1 stop. It was a tackle for loss that the Lions had. Again, talk about leaving points on the board. Obviously, the field goal that we had in this one where he didn't punch it into the end zone, well, a couple of those, but this one specifically here, this 3rd and 1, and what made it so tricky was this. I don't really it felt like it was kind of just like, man, that's unfortunate because as you notice defensively here, they're going to slant on the front side. So what you see is Taylor Decker steps down to give some support to Jonah Jackson as they're slanting on the front side. The issue comes Penei Sewell. So Lions are going to this unbalanced offensive line. Penei Sewell is the widest offensive lineman. And when they do that, the issue comes in where Penei Sewell doesn't recognize that they're slanting on the front side because the guy towards his inside is just rushing vertically upfield. So Penei Sewell doesn't step in to give Taylor Decker support, understanding that Decker is now giving Jonah Jackson support. Instead, Penei Sewell just steps out and tries to seal off on the outside. And it does feel like there's confusion here because of the unbalanced offensive line. As you can see with this zone blocking scheme, everybody kind of sidesteps with the slanting of the offensive line, yet nobody accounts for the C gap on this play. Penei Sewell kind of slides and seals like it's a dual blocking play. Meanwhile, Taylor Decker helps to fill the B gap as well because of the slanting defensive lineman. You can see it sets up the outside blocks, but no one accounts for the C gap. That's where I think you can really question, okay, being prepared for what we got there defensively. Again, speaking of the outside zone movement, the right side of the offensive line, that's where they kind of rolled behind. Graham Glasgow, Penei Sewell, Sewell's ability to seal. Micah Parsons on the edge. That was a big part. We saw a lot of Micah against Sewell, so they trusted him to seal as a run blocker. He had issues with Micah as pass protection without a tight end, but he was able to seal him against the run. And this, Graham Glasgow, you see him moving Mozzie Smith. I'm not going to make the show about this, but I'm going to give it some attention. I'm going to. We have to. This is the week to do it. I'm going to give it attention. I'm going to move on, okay? I'm moving on for the week. But I do got to point this out. So it's not that they called holding here. It's consistency. Big run by Jahmyr Gibbs. It's called holding on James Mitchell. Okay, they called holding. Whatever. Consistency. It was light. It was weak, right? The guy didn't even work away from it. But he got his hands kind of on his shoulder, so okay, whatever. You called holding. Why this drives me nuts is we come back later in this game, and we don't get a holding call. And I'm going to just skip right to it. Aiden Hutchinson here. Freeze frame. How is this not a hold? This was an 11-yard run by their offense. How is this not a hold? But that was a hold. I'm just saying from consistency. I understand it's difficult, but that's the thing that gets to me. And where it gets to me is consistency in terms of game to game. And we're not even talking in the same game here. If I'm just looking at the 2 passes that Dak Prescott literally threw over his receiver to absolutely nobody, and he did it twice. You saw it the first time. Maybe you're like, oh, I didn't even notice that he ran a curl and he threw a bomb. Like, okay, that's on me. That's on me. All right. But when he does it a second time and you still don't call grounding, now I'm frustrated. Why? Not because you didn't call grounding in this game, but because other games this season, I've literally seen you call grounding on the opponent for doing that. It's grounding. He's in the pocket. Why is that not called grounding? That's where I get frustrated. It's the consistency that's lacking there. Not from this game even in particular, though I just showed an example, but also from game to game. There's no consistency. It's like we don't know what we're calling or why we're calling anything. We're just calling things. We're going to get back to that. I'm sorry. We're going to get back to that. Stay tuned. Defensively, biggest play of the game, probably Goff's best throw of the season, I think. Shot to Jameson Williams. Pressure in his face, took a hit, Micah Parsons, and he put on Jameson Williams. Simple as Jameson, you got him one-on-one. It seemed like they went to some kind of quarters look. Goff was able to hold that safety underneath. They allowed Jameson to get over top. And once you do that, you don't have inside leverage. And all of a sudden, he's got a lot of field to work with. And Jameson he's fast. If you didn't know, he's fast. And he runs right by Deron Bland, picks up a big shot. It was a 60-yard play. The most unfortunate thing about this, we didn't score. Why? Well, here's part of it. After the big play, Lions go to another pin pull look. Now, I like the adjustment. This time, Donovan Peoples steps into pin, and you were able to get around that. So, okay, that works. All right, we'll take that. But the issue comes into this. Now, Jonah Jackson can't get up and get on Marquise Bell. So now all of a sudden, it's a tackle for loss because he's not quick enough to get on Marquise Bell. So that's where I think you can question some of the play calling. Like, all right, maybe we're doing too much. Maybe we should have just simplified and said outside zone, outside zone, outside zone. Just keep doing it because even if it doesn't hit, it's what's working. Yeah, I understand you want to keep him off balance. I like the pin pull coming into it. If you watch my preview, you know I said that. I said, hey, I like the pin pull on paper. It's about executing it. And here they executed the main part, the edge rushers. But they're so fast to pursue, they shut it down. Marquise Bell, he's essentially a safety playing linebacker. All right. Here's the big miss as well. 3rd and 3, we go to what looks like a cover 3 look. The key to this is also what they're doing in coverage based on where you're at on the field because the touchdown of St. Brown later essentially got the same look, and the Lions had a really good design for it. But here, you could see it looked like Gibbs kind of slowed at the top of the route. Goff just like fired it out there, anticipation, put it on the sideline, tried to lead him in front of Stephon Gilmore to Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't hate the idea. It should have worked. You didn't execute it. You didn't connect. Thought Gibbs got off his route a little bit slow there. Goff tried to lead him, kind of run him away from the corner instead of putting it on him. That they were just a tad off. It was incomplete. Plus, it was a tied game. Let's take the lead. I get it. I think when you get that shot, you had to take the lead, so I don't have an issue with that decision necessarily. Crucial play. 3rd and 5. Here's that pick play. I'm not mad about the pick play, by the way. But 3rd and 5, they kind of run this. And again, Branch gets through it pretty well. I don't even know if he caught it still, but Brandon Cooks, huge play. That was massive because on the 3rd and 5, now they move the chains. Then they score the touchdown. Lions go cover 1 defensively here, and this is where they get iffy one-on-one in the inside slot with Brandon Cooks. You have kind of linebacker help underneath, but the route has too much depth for it to actually give him any support. On top of that, you don't really have middle field safety help. You kind of do, but they're essentially just bracketing in Kirby Joseph with the outside corner on CeeDee Lamb, so it is a pure one-on-one here. And again, it's an instance where they trust it. It just hasn't been great against receivers. He gives up the touchdown. I don't hate it necessarily. Sometimes you just get beat. In this case, they got beat. I think the Lions were willing to live with that. They said someone else beat us. They also wanted to protect the middle of the field, probably because of Ferguson or any of those crossers. But someone else beat them. And good play by Dallas. They had a good plan for that, and they got outside the numbers, and they got their safety on a number 2 receiver, and it was a good throw. I'm frustrated. Again, 3rd and 5. Consistency. How is this? Look, no one was open. I was even mad about this in the time. We end up just throwing it. It's incomplete. Literally nobody's open. Great coverage. They manned up. I love it. But the issue is not that it's not that they didn't call legal contact here. It's the fact that they literally called a legal contact then a little bit later on Kendall Vilder, again, on a play where you didn't call grounding either, where he just threw it past the receiver. Somehow there was an illegal contact call on Vilder, which I thought was weak. Whatever to that. But if you're going to call that, I need to get a legal contact here. Especially, I'm not even bringing up the St. Brown play because it didn't matter on the last drive. But when that man's getting mugged beyond the line, beyond 5 yards, and he's trying to work back to the ball and there's no flag, where is the consistency at? And to me, this is an example of that too. Hey, you don't flip it around and call legal contact there or anything on St. Brown. I don't know. Hutchinson came through with the key sack for us on the 3rd and 5, took off points. Like I said, the interception to Sam Laporta. They're in that cover 3 look. I don't hate the decision. That's the route we run a ton against cover 3, so it's not necessarily something new. Again, shout out to them defensively. They seemed really prepared for that, and they jumped it on both out routes, actually. They were kind of on top of it. Yes, Montgomery looks like he's open. Of course, he looks like he's open because he threw it there. But at the same time, Montgomery probably could have got a couple yards underneath. The idea wasn't necessarily bad, but Goff, if anything, had to put this way in front of him. And where the cornerback was at, he undercut it. The safety, he had way too much speed. He undercut it. This ball had to get way in front of Laporta. It was not in front of Laporta, and it was intercepted. Shout out to defense. They got us the ball back. And then offensively, the last drive, this is something I think just as a whole, gives you a lot of confidence for this playoff run. It does for me. I don't know about you, but it does for me. And I think we've not seen this all season long. Not to say we've been perfect every time we've needed to score at the end of the game, but man, I do tend to trust the Lions in these moments. I do tend to trust them. And this was another example. This is like the worst team you want to be in this situation against. Like the worst team, because if this was last year, this thing would have been over before it started. Yet, had a great answers for it. Now, they played zone coverage, which could have been a mistake on their part anyway because they didn't blitz. They played zone. They gave Goff time. Could have been some what are you guys doing defensively? But a lot of teams do that. A lot of teams, when they're up, they start to kind of back off a little bit. They don't stay aggressive. Most teams do that. And the Lions have been able to take advantage of teams not blitzing. Pass protection was there. Tight end help. Penei Sewell probably had his best possession of the game. And also attacking zone coverage, which Goff is pretty darn good at. And this was a great example. Goff's movement in the pocket, which I loved. The shot play here to the seam to Sam Laporta against that Tampa 2 look. You hold the linebacker, come back to it. Also, you get kind of this, looks like a cover 4 look. You go left, fire it back right, put it on Amon-Ra St. Brown, separates top of the route, kind of like what we saw at the beginning of the game. You get this man coverage, 2-man look. That's great for the back end, but guess what? Underneath, you better be able to cover. Sam Laporta, here he is, makes a play.
Look, I don't want to sound like a broken record or something, but this is, again, back to the offseason. Who was going to be that man beater for us? Who was going to be a matchup piece against man, where I had a lot of concern coming into the season? And I thought it'd be Laporta. It's why I thought he'd have a big year, but also specifically, it's why I thought he'd be the piece in this game that'd have a big game. Understand he had the drop against man, but just like this, Ben Johnson's creativity, right? You create kind of the stack, which creates leverage in terms of when he makes that break, the cornerback's in that half turn, so now it's hard for him to get flipped around. We saw it kind of in a different way last week with Khalif, where you have the cornerback flipped one way and then he can run the comeback route. And then again, Sam Laporta is just his ability to win one-on-one in man coverage. It's been a game changer, and it will continue to be for a long time.
Takes off, picks up a first down, and then again the touchdown where it seemed that they went to that kind of like cover 3 look with inside the 10. Why that was so crucial is because the Lions had just seen this, and now they use their outside receiver to break the out route, which usually the outside corner is going to stay vertical, and you utilize him to break the out route. That way the outside flat defender doesn't see it. He gets behind him, and then he breaks it, so really there's kind of a void there. As you know, they say flats are open in cover 3. Well, especially when you see the way that they were covering it. This thing was open. You hit Saint. He walks to the end zone. It was a great design. And then, of course, it was the last, 2-point conversion. And again, I don't want to be here all day. You guys have heard everything. I'm not going to give you a better answer than anything you've probably heard at this point. But all I can say is this. I hear the illegal formation. I don't know how it would be illegal formation. First off, there's the fact of Lions said they reported him as eligible. Dan Campbell spoke to him before the game. That's a mistake by the refs. You saw him communicate to him. I believe that was a mistake by the refs. But not even to go into any of that because I can't hear the audio of it, and I also have heard everybody else say it, so it's understood. But I also want to point this out. In the NFL, it's different than college. You have to have at least one guy on the ball on each side of the line of scrimmage. College, you can have 2 on one side, 0 on the other, but you have to have 2 guys on the ball. And as you can see by the alignment, Taylor Decker obviously is on the line of scrimmage as the offensive lineman. Donovan Peoples-Jones is off the line of scrimmage, meaning that it's clear that they think that he's supposed to be eligible. This wasn't by mistake because Peoples-Jones is not on the ball. So Taylor Decker is. If he's eligible, this makes it a legal formation. They messed that up, as we know. I'm not going to go down that path. They stayed aggressive. They backed up to the 7. They tried to get it. They got him off sides. It was incomplete. The biggest issue I have is that after the flag, you were actually further away from the 2-point conversion than the first 2-point conversion because of the darn flag. So it actually kind of threw us off, not by a lot, but a little bit, because you were further back than you normally would be for a 2-point conversion, even after the offside flag, because now it's half the distance to his goal instead of just a normal 5 yard. So it did kind of throw us off a little bit. However, on that last play, again, I don't hate the design. Could have had a chance, maybe. I think if we were a yard closer, it gives us a way better shot. However, here, the pass, a little bit kind of low. I thought it was a little bit underthrown here. James Mitchell unable to come with the catch. I don't know that he gets in any way. The Lions kind of set up picks for him. That way he can run underneath and into the end zone. And it does not happen. The Lions don't connect on that one, and they're short, and they don't get in. We kind of spoke on this last night. I don't have an issue with them necessarily going for 2. You guys know when I was live, I was yelling. I was like, bro, just take the extra point. We're better than this team. Let's play an extra quarter with them. But I also understand on the road with all the goofiness that has went on. You want to go make the play and end this thing. And he said that he told his guys coming in we were going to do it. I'm not going to fault him and act like he didn't have a play for it because they had a play for it and it worked. It was called back for whatever reason. Going from the 7, that was a little more risky. It sounded like Dan Campbell would have snapped it regardless if they jumped off sides, but they gave him the jump, and that was good. So it was kind of a free play. And then next time, the play to James Mitchell, I don't know that it would have worked, but I kind of think it would have worked if you would have connected really well there. If it would have been a better pass and a catch by James Mitchell, I actually think that probably would have worked. So the fact is you had a play for it. It didn't work. Campbell told his guys that's what they're going to do. We're going to score. We're going to get to 2, and we're going to get out of here. And they didn't execute it. But I think overall, do I walk up away from this game feeling worse? Like, oh, man, the Lions aren't the team I thought they were. Absolutely not. If anything, I feel a lot better. The way they played on the road, through all the craziness that took place, they stuck with them. They hung with them. They showed that they could get movement, which is going to be crucial when it comes to the playoff time. They can get movement on this defensive line as well, which is something they're going to be able to lean into. They were able to score on the final drive against one of the worst teams that you would think you'd want to be in that situation up against. They were able to do it. They weren't able to win this one, but as I said in the Bleacher Report stream, you couldn't win a Super Bowl yesterday anyway, right? All you could do is help your playoff seeding, and it would have been great, but it also could align us with a potential Lions-Dallas playoff game at some point, and I'm down for a part 2. We couldn't win a Super Bowl yesterday anyway, but I can say, again, we're looking for what do we know about the Lions, and to me, a lot of things that I felt that I thought felt confident in with the Lions, to me, are more and more true. Cam Sutton, of course, had a rough game in this one. Hopefully, him being healthy will help him out a little bit. Kendall Vildor, I think, is continuing to be a massive part of this defense. Cam Sutton clearly struggled, whether that was from zone coverage when he gave too much cushion. He had some good reps in there. It definitely tackled well. Had some good man coverage stuff underneath. Had the one where he didn't really move for whatever reason on a 3rd and 10, and he hit him on the slant. Was not his best game, but I think a lot of things that I believe to be true about this defense are true, and this team as a whole, as well as I thought the linebacker play was honestly some of his best I've seen this season. Now, I'll know more for the All-22, but I think it was some of the best this season. I was really proud to see that. I was really excited to see the way that Alex played. Jack Campbell stepped up. I mean, those guys, the communication was on point. Those guys, I mean, they handled business. And I thought that was actually my biggest concern defensively coming into this game. Turns out they actually seemingly did pretty darn well there. Derek Barnes, he let one get out to the flat arm, but then he came back, took it away. We ended up getting the sacks.
We also had whatever this was, which you don't hate the play call at all. Go cover 0. That ultimately leads to the big touchdown. You just missed the sack, but it worked against Miami when you got aggressive when they were back in their own end zone. So I didn't have an issue with the play call. We just clearly didn't execute.
Man, I think we know who this team is, and I think that's the biggest positive. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.